Please watch to the end of this video, or at least to the end of my rebuttal, before commenting. I've heard the argument that God is the uncaused cause. I'm sure you have too, if you clicked on this video, or even if you just got recommended it. Essentially, the argument goes, everything needs a cause. There must therefore be a first cause, otherwise we enter an infinite regress, so there must be a God. This argument has so many holes, I couldn't name them all. Just kidding, I'm going to name them all. Firstly, the premise is that everything needs a cause, but the conclusion is that God is an uncaused cause. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Does everything need a cause? If you say that everything but God needs a cause, then you are doing what is called special pleading. Special pleading is a form of logical fallacy where you say that something is always true except for in one particular instance. For example, some people say that all people of some race are X, Y, or Z terrible thing. But then when they meet a person of that race that they like, they say, but not this one. All people of that race are or are not X, Y, or Z terrible thing. Either everything needs a cause, including God, or things can exist without needing a cause. You can't have both. You need to choose one. If God needs a cause, then he is not the uncaused cause, which disproves your theological rhetoric. And if not everything needs a cause, such as God, then God is unnecessary because the universe could be eternal. Or, in other words, if you say the universe cannot be eternal because nothing can be eternal, and then you say that God is eternal, you are obviously and clearly contradicting yourself. If you're going to say that everything that begins to exist needs a cause, consider this. How can you prove that the universe began to exist? Even the Big Bang Theory does not necessarily say that the universe began to exist, rather discussing the expansion of the universe. The second problem is the assumption that an infinite regress is impossible. The argument goes that, if it regressed infinitely, there would never be a point in which we exist. The problem is that this assumes the A theory of time, the idea that time is created continuously. There is also the B theory of time, the idea that all of time exists at once. We can't say for sure which is correct, or if those are really the only options, so we should really remain agnostic about that. With that being said, it's arguable if an infinite regress is impossible. Thirdly, how do we know that God is the first cause? The idea of a God is a highly developed concept. It is a really big thing to say exists. Let's take the Abrahamic gods as our example. If there is one singular infinite God, this answer of God as the first cause is definitionally infinitely complex. It is the ultimate 747, as Richard Dawkins put it in The God Delusion. A personal mind is also a highly complex process that emerges through other highly complex processes. So if we say that it is a personal God with a mind and will, well, that is a highly complex being we are discussing. Another hole is that, while this does argue for the existence of a God philosophically, it actually presents no evidence for a God. Instead, it points at something we know exists and makes assumptions that lead us to the conclusion that a God exists. Which, if we're being honest, is just the conclusion the person arguing for God already believes without a good reason. If we have two things, one is called A and one is called B, and we are trying to figure out if B is red, if we say that A is red, what do we learn about B? We learn nothing, don't we? Unless you can give a sufficient reason that A being red caused B to be red. A is the universe and B is God. The color red is the property of existing, if you can call existing a property at all. The universe existing doesn't prove that a God exists unless you give sufficient reason that the universe existing requires a God to exist. While people think that the uncaused cause argument is that proof, it is not for the above-mentioned reasons. Ultimately, if the premises of a philosophical argument cannot be independently supported, then the argument is not philosophically sound. A possible response is that the universe is contingent. I shouldn't have to say that this has to be independently philosophically argued for. I hope that I have covered everything, at least everything within reason. I know I might not have fully addressed this topic, but I think what I have said so far is sufficient as a general response. I wrote this script because I got into an argument with someone this evening, the evening I am writing this on at least, that got very heated and that resulted in my opponent just insulting my intelligence and saying that I was refusing to listen to his logic. I explained basically everything I explained here, to the best of my ability, but I hope this is a much more concise and clear version of my argument. Either way, I do hope you have a good night, or day, or morning, or whatever time it is for you. Please consider leaving a like, sharing, subscribing, and all that stuff. I also have a Patreon. My patrons, as of the 8th of February, are Michael McConnell and Benjamin Johnson. Thank you to them, and thank you for watching to the end of this video. Even the Big Bang Theory does not necessarily say that the universe began to exist, rather discunching? 3, 2, 1. Even the Big Bang Theory.